And I have one more order of questions for the panelists, which is, so now you form your corporations, whether it's LLC, S Corp, or C Corp, depending on what you want. Now, that's something that Igor brought up, which is, how do I protect myself from getting sued? I have a question for you, Matt, which is, what kind of stuff should developers worry about in terms of IP protection, intellectual properties? Obviously, Igor or Bryan, they all have created something very, very unique, and it's very, very different. How do they protect themselves? How do developers protect themselves? And what kind of things they should be worried about?
So I'm going to keep this pretty high level on the understanding that you probably want to hear from these other guys up here in the panel, not just the lawyers. But there are a couple different buckets of ideas that you probably want to consider. The one bucket is trademark, another bucket is copyright. There are some other intellectual property issues, but let's just sort of focus on those two, which are probably more at the core for what you all are doing. Trademark protection is basically protects names and logos and things of that sort, names of characters, names of companies, names of games and the like. Copyright, on the other hand, protects creative expression. We'll just use that as a shorthand. So it might be the way that a character in a game looks, let's say. So you're really going to have a number of goals, I think, as a company, regardless of whether you're a small company or a bigger company. One is that you want to be able to continue using the things that you've developed and not have someone prevent you from using them. Another thing you want to do is not only just be able to use them, but you want to be able to grow your brand in a way so that these things actually, your names, your characters, and the like, become more valuable over time and become a powerful asset. And you also want to just, frankly, stay out of harm's way and not get sued for infringement. So there's sort of a lot here. This is a pretty rich area, but just to start with trademark for a minute. When you're thinking about what kind of name you might want to use for your company or your game, you can go to a firm, and it could be Cooley or it could be some other firm, and it's actually not terribly difficult or expensive to get some counseling on that. The lawyers can do some searches to see if there are other names out there that might create problems if you were to pick that name and run with it. And I think that can often be a really good investment at the front end, because the last thing you want to do is pick a name and you get a year down the road and you become enormously successful, and then you run into this problem and you have the light bulb a year too late and realize, oh my gosh, I've got a problem. Or maybe you don't have the light bulb, maybe somebody else plants the light bulb above your head for you. You can also want to think about whether you register your trademark. It's not necessarily essential to do so. There are common law rights in the United States, so that if you're using a trademark, and I should emphasize, and I'm going to simplify a bit, but essentially you got to be using the trademark in commerce. You got to be offering to sell something or actually using it. So if you haven't gotten to the point in the life cycle where you've actually done that, you may not have the common law trademark rights that are attached. And again, I'm simplifying a bit, but so you ought to really be thinking about whether it makes sense and consulting with someone about whether it makes sense to register the trademark. On the copyright side of things, I think one thing you've got to be concerned about is whether, let's just take an example, a character that you're developing is going to be, someone's going to say that you basically imitated some other character that's already out there. And it's frankly, a very fuzzy, gray area, and no one wants to hear that. I know you'd like to have more certainty, but it's something to be thinking about for sure. Another copyright issue that you might want to be thinking about, and this all depends on the type of game that you're developing, but are the rights that you need to be licensing from current rights holders? You can think of a game like Guitar Hero. probably the developers of that game thought a little bit about needing to reach out to some music companies to get licenses for that music before they launched the game, and really behooves you to be thinking through all those issues at the front end. The last point I'll just touch on, which is a related point but a little bit different, is, and it kind of ties into what Craig was talking about to some extent, is really thinking at the outset, how do you want to structure your activities, and who's going to be doing what, and who's going to own what. And these might seem like kind of lofty or esoteric ideas, but truly, I'm kind of thinking now about the paradigm of a real small, two-person operation, maybe a couple friends who decided to do this. Often it's not where you want to be spending your energy thinking about agreements and things like that, and so I totally understand that as a practical matter, it's not what you want to be dealing with, but it really does behoove you to think about whether it makes sense to enter an agreement while everything's great, and while there's maybe before the game takes off, and just come to some understanding of what your roles are going to be, who's going to retain what rights going down the road, because if, God forbid, there were to be some sort of dispute. I know this never ever happens out there. People who start out together may not see eye to eye later. It's really helpful if you thought through those issues in advance and try to reach a contractual understanding.
I have a real-world example that may or may not be topical and relevant, but one of the things we did in tuning our search engine was, we tried different algorithms, and the test case we used was Doodle. And I was shocked at how many different games there are in App Store that have the word Doodle or Jump. And I wonder if that's something, you don't seem like a litigious sort, but does that play into this? On the one hand, app developers are marketing their applications, and that is a clever marketing strategy.
Can you film for a second? You can do it from back here. I don't think we're that.
Is that something that, how does that play into the ability to protect one's name, like Doodle Jump in this case, and the ability for another developer to name something similarly and kind of ride off his coattails?
Well, it's a complicated answer to that question. Simple question, complicated answer, but there could be some issues there. If the names are similar and likely to be used in a commercial context, which it appears that they are, and likely to cause confusion among consumers as to what the source of the games are. There could very well be issues there, and we may need to talk after the panel is over. But no, you're right. In all seriousness, you're right to spot that as an issue, and this sort of thing goes on all the time, and not every company that owns a trademark ultimately decides to enforce it aggressively. But there are different brand protection and enforcement strategies that are out there that can sort of span the spectrum, so that it's not necessarily that you have to commit to waging litigation warfare in the first instance. It could eventually become a problem if there's a lot of similar use and potential infringement going on, and you don't take steps to protect it. So you're absolutely right to spot that issue, that you've got to really pay attention to what's going on out there and make a strategic decision about whether you're going to take affirmative steps to protect your brand. And to do that, it's going to require confrontation with the other individuals or the companies that are using your mark.